All right, y'all. So last video of today, we got three AFC versus AFC games to talk about from this weekend, each from Saturday, and then Christmas Day on Monday we had the Raiders and Chiefs. So starting with the Steelers and Bengals game, we picked this one incorrectly. You know,
Yeah.
we I I'll tell you straight up right now, I could have not expected this on the wildest day. I mean it was just it was pretty much over within a couple drives, it was done. You talk about the game that Brock Purdy had for all those turnovers. Jake Browning didn't have much of a better game, maybe set yardage wise. Three interceptions for him. Steelers offense was really good, to say the least. Mason Rudolph had darn near 300 yards, two touchdowns. I mean, you put on here it was a legacy game for him. I would say it would be. I mean, great performance by him, in the absence of Kenny Pickett, of course. Yeah, I mean, there's really not much to say. I mean, if this Steelers team, if they could have taken this Steelers team from Saturday night and put them throughout the entire season, we wouldn't be having a discussion about them every single week the way we do. But you never know because next week they might turn around and lose to the Seahawks. So you never know with the Steelers, to be honest with you. But this one was just a straight up surprise. I mean, I couldn't have expected this because again, they played the previous Saturday, and outside of the first two drives, they looked pretty pathetic against the Colts. But they made the Bengals look pathetic in this one. So I'll eat my words here.
Man, I mean, I watched this one and I was just befuddled. Jake Browning went from "you should have never kept me" to "what are you doing?" He threw three picks against a pretty scrappy Steelers defense. I mean, that's a hard defense to survive against, but three interceptions, one touchdown, 28 for 42 is just not a good stat line. Not a good game. Watching the game, every time Jake Browning was doing something, I was like, ugh. And he finishes with 335 yards, but it doesn't feel like that at all. T. Higgins gets some big receptions to kind of boost that up, but the Mason Rudolph and George Pickens and Najee Harris trio just erupt for massive days. 80 yards for Harris, 200 yards for Pickens, 300 yards for Rudolph. Touchdowns among all three of those guys. Both of Rudolph's touchdowns go to Pickens. Najee Harris runs one in as well. It's just the Steelers suddenly come to life. Their offense springs to life with Mason Rudolph under center. I mean, he's already played a little bit in the season and hasn't played this well, but comes out and shut me up. I don't know if I said it word for word, but I pretty much said it in the previous episode that the Steelers offense led by Mason Rudolph wasn't moving me too much, and they moved the Bengals for sure. This is big for their hopeful playoff implications. It's also big for the Bills, who needed the Bengals to lose a game. A lot of stuff happening in the AFC to open up the lane for the Bills. The Bills have now also, of course, increased their record to a good spot. But Steelers come out, play some good defense, hold the Bengals to 11 points, and put up 34 points in the process. We haven't seen a Steelers game like this all season, and it's about time we get one. From there, we will talk about the Bills, who have had the seas opened up for them, and then they've been able to walk to a somewhat clean path after their rough part of the middle season. However, they did not get to walk through this one. They had to fight their way against the Chargers, led by Easton Stick, no longer led by Brandon Staley, though. However, we've said it plenty of times on the show. If there's one thing the Buffalo Bills like to do, it is keep their opponent alive and in the game. And they did, in fact, do that one in this. The Chargers fight them and barely lose 24-22. Nothing really left in this fight for the Chargers except to try to drag the Bills down. Doesn't work out. Josh Allen has a decent enough game, 15 for 21, 240 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. You expect that, but he plays pretty good otherwise. Not too much to complain about. Gabe Davis, massive game, 130 yards on 4 catches and a touchdown. He has a big game for fantasy managers. Probably not so happy. James Cook and Stephon Diggs don't do a whole lot. But the Chargers and Easton Stick actually play a pretty good game. Josh Palmer starting to take over as a head receiver there. Austin Eckler looking a little more competent again, recovering from that injury. And Easton Stick went from his horrible game against the Raiders, where they allowed the Raiders to put up 63 points, to putting up 22 and fighting against the Bills, almost taking down what should be an AFC juggernaut. This was a surprising one. We didn't do picks for this game. I'm sure we both would have picked the Bills, but I would not have picked the Bills to win just by 2 in this scenario. But maybe this shows, without Brandon Staley, there's a little bit of confidence there, and I think there's a bit of a combo of Brandon Staley's gone, so the Chargers can try to be a competent football team, but also the Bills will keep their opponents in the game, and so that's a good combination for the Chargers' first game without Staley to try to take a leap and look like a good team. And I'd say they did. I think they played good football. It's unfortunate that they're 5-10. This season is over for them. There's going to be a lot of questions for them to answer as we enter the offseason and get closer to some expiring contracts. But as for now, there's some hope in the results of this game.
I I agree. I think both of us probably would have picked the Bills. And again, it wouldn't have been by two. But when I was texting you during the game, and my first thoughts were just like, I don't want to say it's a trap game, I guess, because it's not like the Bills are 12-4 or anything like that. But I guess this would be kind of considered a trap game because you got a team that fired their coach, of course. So we've seen teams that fire their coach and have good games right after. The Raiders, Antonio Pierce. We're going to talk about him in just a second. And then the Chargers, specifically losing to a divisional rival on, I guess, national TV, Prime Video, Thursday Night Football, the way they did, like, that's got to motivate you to come out and do something because everybody's pretty much expecting you. The Bills are on this great run right now. They're on making headway to get back into the playoff hunt. They are in the playoffs as of now. You would expect them to get run over in this one, and they didn't. Obviously the Bills they kind of turned things back on, second, third quarter, but this one had me a little bit worried for the Bills, to be honest with you. Because especially when you look at who the Chargers have at receiver, the Josh Palmer, you mentioned him, Gerald Everett, they're not scrubs or anything, but like when they were doing the lineups, I'm like, man, the Chargers receivers, like it's just I mean, obviously you got injuries, Mike Williams again, Keenan Allen injured again. I can't really say much about it, right? Because it's like, they got injuries. I mean, what do you want them to really do? But once you get past those first two guys, it's like, wow, that receiver core is it's not not fantastic. And most teams obviously don't go three deep with great receivers, but not amazing receiving core. But they were able to get it done for most of this game. Um, just until obviously the end of it, they weren't able to come up and get the dub there. But yeah, this one had me a little bit concerned for the Bills. Like, you mentioned it, Stephon Diggs, not the greatest game again, but it's been a string of games now where he's been under 100 yards. And of course, they didn't run the ball nearly as well as they did against the Cowboys, but you don't really expect to have that kind of game, multiple times in a row, even if you are one of the better teams in the league at running the ball. And Josh Allen, you mentioned it, one pick. That's pretty much just a daily thing with Josh or weekly thing with Josh Allen. I should say, but as long as he's not throwing three or four or anything like that, and he's being careful with the ball, otherwise, it's not the end of the world. But if this was a better team, let's be honest with you, the Bills they would have lost this game. So it does leave me a little bit concerned as they face the Patriots this week. I don't, you know, you would say I don't expect the Patriots to lose to the Bills, or excuse me, I should say I shouldn't expect the Patriots to beat the Bills. Bills lose to the Patriots, but they just beat the Broncos, and Broncos screwed that one up. So you never know. But yeah, that one leaves me a little bit concerned, as well as this game leaves me a little bit concerned for the Chiefs. They lose to the Raiders. I mean, this. I'm gonna read Aiden O'Connell's stats, quarterback for the Raiders, real quick. 9 for 21, 62 yards. I don't remember if it was first quarter or second quarter that he completed his last pass, but he didn't have a completion in the second half. I know that for sure. Because I just, not even without looking at the stat specifically, I remember at some point in the game, I'm sitting there like, when was the last time the Raiders offense was on the field? When was the last time they actually did anything on the field offensively? Like this one, Chiefs, I wouldn't say the Chiefs should be embarrassed, but the Chiefs, obviously, they got to be pissed off. I mean, they two touchdowns in like a matter of like 2 seconds for the Raiders defense. I mean, they were up 7-3, went from 7-3 to down 17-7 in like a blink. I mean, I really don't know what else to say about this Chiefs team at this point. They might win that first game depending on who they play. if they're a 3 or 4 seed, whichever. And maybe not, but either way, I don't see them winning Jack this year. I'd be if the Chiefs somehow win a Super Bowl this year, I will be insanely surprised. It might be the greatest thing I've ever seen. Um, but for the Raiders, you got to give them a lot of credit with how they played. Obviously under an interim head coach who, at this point, they should make Antonio the permanent head coach. We'll see if they screw this one up like they did before. But you can take away a lot of things from both teams in this one: resiliency from the Raiders and the lack of just everything for the Chiefs.
Yeah, we gave out the tomfoolery award to Kadarius Toney of the Chiefs a few weeks ago. Maybe perhaps it should have just gone to the Chiefs as a team this season. They just cannot get it together. I mean, they're 9-6. That's not nothing to be too mad at. But that is so far. I mean, regardless of being so far, it is the most losses for the Chiefs in a season where Patrick Mahomes is the starter. They got a few more games ahead of them. So I mean, they could keep pushing that boundary potentially. Obviously, that's not something that you want to do. They don't have the hardest of matchups coming up next either. But I feel a little weird about the Chiefs when we think about hard matchups because I mean the Raiders have a decent defense and they've got a great coach who's able to kind of manage that defense. But this is a game where Aiden O'Connell plays as if he's in the Army Navy game. Um, there's just 62 yards and then decides, I'm not going to complete any more passes in this game. Jameer White does rack up 145 yards on the ground, but there's no offensive touchdowns. They don't. That's just not in the Raiders' playbook in this game. You did an 8-yard fumble return followed immediately by a 33-yard pick six. I mean, you said it. You don't think the Chiefs will be winning. Jack. Speaking of Jack Jones, two pick sixes in back-to-back weeks, and I mean just a massive game here for them against the Raiders or against the Chiefs. This one is just I'm a bit concerned for this Chiefs team. I do not find them to be a worrisome team. If you're an AFC fan, I would not worry about a playoff matchup because honestly, this doesn't seem like regular season woes. The Chiefs just cannot get it together. Their receivers aren't catching it. They talked about the amount of drops in the games, and then right after saying that, they said how at least Travis Kelce hasn't been dropping him, and he immediately dropped a pass. It has not been sunshine and rainbows for the Chiefs this season. The Raiders are trying their best to stay alive this season. Like the whole AFC West, except for the Chargers, are actually trying to stay alive. The Broncos have faltered a bit here recently, but I mean we have a team now who's only 2 games behind the Chiefs and the Raiders, and they also have somewhat favorable matchups against the Colts and Broncos coming up. There's some weird stuff going on throughout the season. Terrence and I have kind of said, as the AFC West keeps doing things that yeah, the Raiders and Broncos are there; they exist. But there's not a whole lot that we're worried about. And though I do think the Chiefs will probably win out their last 2 weeks, there's some pretty easy scenarios where they keep messing around and dropping passes and turning the ball over. And the Raiders could potentially steal that division, which would be insane to think about, especially with Jimmy G not starting and Antonio Pierce coming in to relieve their coaching situation this season. It's just an interesting scenario. Patrick Mahomes is now third in the NFL for turnovers. There's a lot of things that we need to be talking about with the Chiefs. But yeah, the main thing is they don't look like the Chiefs that we've known for the past few years. And a Super Bowl feels like a long shot this season. There's just too much going wrong for them, and too much going right. Some other teams in the NFL, including some of their AFC rivals. I mean, you put the Chiefs team from yesterday against the Ravens team from yesterday. They might be a 50-point victory. The Chiefs just were not clean. That Ravens defense is scary. I don't find the Chiefs to be threatening, and I think that there's an interesting pathway to look at here in the AFC West to see who comes out of that division because there's some possibilities here where it gets real ugly for the Chiefs real quickly.